talk some Zoom video, one that we've talked about more times than I can remember now, Landon, over just this past 2-3 month period.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, many people have been using this 3 months ago, but now all of a sudden everyone knows who it is, and it's all because of quarantine and the lockdown. And this is one that they're about to report earnings. We've talked about this before, and I can't remember a time where I've seen a company's purchase intent go up 40 times quarter over quarter, so that's 4,000%. This is an incredible surge for Zoom Video. And you can see here we've got the 7-day moving average and the daily mentions. And you can actually see, I like this chart, you can actually see the weekends here. So people are using it more during the week. And yes, there's a massive surge initially, and it has fallen off, but pretty much all of that surge is contained inside the quarter that's about to be reported. And of course, analysts and Wall Street, they know that Zoom is being used tremendously more than in the past. So this is no surprise. It's just a question of how much. And so, we've got purchase intent, like I said, up 4,000% quarter over quarter. It is starting to trend down. People are using it a little bit less. But when we look at people talking about upgrading or paying for the subscriptions, going from free to paid, because this is a freemium model, it's actually kind of steady. And so the mentions of Zoom, people installing it are slightly going down, but the people talking about paying for it are actually holding pretty strong. I think their security concerns are largely going away. Kevin, you just talked about that. They made some great strategic partnerships, so for PR and for effectiveness. So security is actually not a big deal anymore, and just overall, we're seeing a ton of usage. It's going to be really interesting to see how the markets react to their earnings.
Hey, Landon, there's not much we can say about Zoom other than hyperbole and the fact that so many people use it so many different ways, and their real goal is to try to hold on to as many people as possible. But my question, going back to that CrowdStrike that you and I we were just talking about, did you see a drop off when the security concerns hit, and then a resurgence when they partnered with CrowdStrike? Was there any fluctuation in the data when that happened?
It was large. The fluctuation was in the happiness, actually, not in purchase intent, not in usage. It was just more people concerned about it, but they didn't stop using it so much. And I think that largely is because the people that were concerned were the end users, and so they weren't the ones talking about installing and paying for it. Whereas the organizers of those events were the ones that maybe made those kind of decisions, and there's fewer of them. But one thing that is interesting is you kind of compare Zoom versus like a Microsoft Teams. There's different use cases there. They're both used for business for sure. But I think Microsoft Teams, that's the primary use for that. Whereas Zoom is used a lot more for lifestyle things like talking with family and friends, or even working out, or for school functions. And so when you compare those two, it's a pretty stark contrast in the use case. Zoom has sort of all of the above, where Microsoft is more focused on the work aspect. But I think that one of the things that really hurt Zoom initially was the security concerns when it comes to business, because businesses don't like to mess around with security. They don't like to take those risks. They did a good job of shoring that up. Not sure if it's too late, but they're on the right track for sure. But again, the usage is just incredible, up 40x quarter over quarter. I can't wait to see what they report.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. We'll see as what numbers are even going to be, good enough or not good enough for this company. The expectation is just so high. But Landon, you talked about the sentiment and the happiness around Zoom Video, and oftentimes it is compared to bigger players like Microsoft Teams. How does the happiness compare between those two companies? As we know, obviously, Zoom is going to be a little bit more sensitive to, growth in this space than something like Microsoft, where it's a small part of their business. But Zoom's also probably going to be focused on delivering a better experience because it is their primary business, as opposed to Microsoft, which, of course, does so many different things.
Sure. And of course, at LikeFolio, we do like to compare things company to company, but we also have the ability to dive in on the brand level. And so, as you mentioned, Microsoft is so huge. It'd be silly to compare Microsoft's happiness to Zoom's, but we can compare Microsoft Teams happiness to Zoom's, and in that category, Zoom's actually winning by quite a bit. Zoom's got a happiness of about 73%, whereas Teams is around 64%. So they got them by about 9 points now, which is a fairly significant number. And again, I think a lot of that has to do with just the way that people use it. It's a little bit more fun to use Zoom because of the reasons that you're getting on. It's not always work. It's connecting with people that you like, and no offense to my coworkers, but connecting to people that you want to see, your friends, your family, your workouts, those things like that. And so I think it's just a use case situation, and the fact that they shore up all of their security concerns. I think that's big for them.
We won't tell Andy you said that, Landon. Don't worry. Kevin, I want to get your thoughts on this as well, because when I hear that gap between Teams and Zoom, it is significant. I believe you said 9 percentage points, Landon. But to me, if Zoom can't maintain that, that's the risk. Because if something like Microsoft can achieve the same experience and offer so much more, it's going to be hard for corporations and things. And I know that doesn't include the lifestyle stuff that you're referring to, Landon, but it's going to be hard for Zoom to continue to grow if there's a bigger company that can do it better, or at least the same going forward.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a concern.
You're right. That's always the risk. Oh, that's always the risk with Zoom. And I want to hear Landon's, Zoom is like Netflix, right? Where it has a lot or all of its eggs in that basket, where Disney has several baskets with a lot of eggs spread out. Microsoft has a lot of baskets with eggs spread out. Zoom has one basket, so they have to be really good at that, or they can come under attack. Go ahead, Landon. I mean to step on you there.
No, I interrupted. I'm sorry. I think that what's interesting is this is a sort of a rising tide situation. We've got people talking about either permanently working from home or working from home for the foreseeable future up significantly, about 60% month over month. And so I think that this is a trend that's not going away. We've got a lot of large companies, very public companies, saying we're going to work from home for the foreseeable future, maybe even permanently, like Shopify, Twitter, Facebook. These are big companies that have the potential to set trends. For LikeFolio, we're back in the office this week for the first time, very excited about that. But for a lot of other companies, especially the tech-heavy companies that can do it, there may be a large shift to working from home. And I think that it could be enough to support both of these companies. So I don't necessarily think it has to be Zoom versus Teams. They can both win. Of course, they're going to fight for that larger piece of the pie, but Zoom also has all those other use cases, which is working for them. So I think that you definitely have to consider that the pie is growing for everyone.
Well, then, Landon, let me ask you a different question, because I love to hear your take on this and your thoughts on trend shifts and the direction things are going. If the pie is growing, some other pie's got to be shrinking. So where are the second and third order impacts? Is it in commercial real estate? Is it in hotel and travel industry, as this kind of work environment can be applied to conventions and meetings and things that used to really buoy the travel and leisure space? Does that the impact? Is that the area that's going to suffer the blows, if you will, from the growth in this industry?
I think that I think commercial real estate's the number one that just jumps off the list at me. But then I think for meetings, it's tough. I think if you're talking about a very small, short meeting with just a few people, yeah, you can do it online. If you're talking about a convention or a larger group of people where it's maybe 8 to 12 or more, you can't compete with being in person. There's just something about that where there's just so much more productivity. You make better connections. So I don't see that going away, but I'm really not sure what percentage of meetings or what percentage of travel is based on those really small meetings versus the larger ones. My guess is the larger ones are the bulk, and I don't think those are going away. But I definitely do think that, when there's really small meetings, you're going to say, hey, let's just jump on Teams or Zoom. But to answer your question, commercial real estate, definitely number one for me.
All right, guys. Well, hey, I wish we could continue the conversation. It's going to be interesting to see how this all shapes up, and I'm really interested to see Zoom's results. So, Lane, I guess last thing here, is it enough? Are you tracking enough growth to meet the expectations and potentially move this stock higher on earnings, or are you guys cautiously leaning a different direction?
It's tough when you've got a 40x move on purchase intent. The stock is only up about 2x in quarantine, but they're up, they're around $200 now, $56 billion valuation, 10% market maker move priced in. This is a really wild one to trade. If I had to pick a side, I would definitely pick the bullish side because I think the numbers are going to be huge. I don't know how huge the analysts are expecting them to come in, so that's really what it's all about. But I love the growth and the trajectory of this company.